7 deadly cash flow mistakes that kill startups and how to avoid them.
That's a good one.
So are you ready to dive in?
Let's do it.
Okay, perfect. So I think we should start with the fact that a lot of startups, they've got a great idea, a great team, they're ready to go, but then...
They run out of cash.
Yeah, exactly. It's like this heartbreaking thing.
It really is. It's like, 38% of startups fail because they run out of cash.
Wow, that's a huge number.
It is.
It's like you're building this rocket ship, and then you realize you forgot to fuel it up.
Right.
So let's talk about that first mistake, ignoring cash flow forecasting.
Yeah.
What does that actually mean, like on a practical level?
It means not having a good handle on how much cash you actually have available to spend.
Okay.
A lot of startups just focus on revenue, but revenue isn't the same as cash flow.
Yeah, you could have, like, a ton of sales, but...
Right. You could have a ton of sales on the books, but if you haven't collected the money yet,
oh, yeah,
then you might be in trouble.
Yeah, that makes sense. So it's not enough to just, track income and expenses.
Right.
You've got to, project those numbers out.
You got to look ahead.
See what your cash situation's going to look like, right?
Exactly.
So is that where tools like QuickBooks or Xero come in?
That's exactly where they come.
For someone who's never used those,
Right.
how would you even describe them?
Well, think of them as like a financial command center for your business.
Okay.
They can track every dollar coming in, every dollar going out.
Mm-hmm.
They help you categorize your expenses.
Oh, wow.
And then they give you these reports, that show you a real-time picture of your cash flow.
Okay.
And that can be incredibly helpful.
Yeah, I bet. So you can see, okay, rent, that's fixed. But marketing...
Right. Fixed costs versus variable costs.
Yeah.
That's a big one.
Wow. Okay. So that level of detail helps you forecast much more accurately.
Much more accurately.
So I imagine, regular financial reviews are crucial too, right?
Absolutely.
You're not just waiting for that quarterly report. You're staying on top of it weekly.
Weekly, at least.
Wow.
It helps you catch problems early.
Like before they become problems.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Remember Pets.com?
Oh, yeah.
Classic example.
What happened to them?
Well, they had a ton of revenue,
Oh, really?
but they had terrible cash flow.
Oh, how does that even...
They were spending way more money than they were taking in.
Oh, wow.
And so
They went bankrupt.
they went bankrupt.
Even with all that revenue.
It's a classic example.
Wow, okay. It's a good reminder that revenue and cash flow are not always the same thing.
Not the same thing.
Okay, let's talk about that second mistake, overestimating revenue growth.
Oh, yeah.
Why do so many startups fall into this trap?
Well, it's easy to get caught up in the excitement, right?
Oh, yeah, the hype.
The hype, yeah. You're projecting these hockey stick growth curves.
Right.
But, in reality, growth takes time.
It does. It does.
And if you overestimate it, you can make some really bad decisions.
Like what kinds of bad decisions?
Well, you might overspend on hiring,
Oh.
on marketing, on inventory.
Yeah. Basically scaling up before...
Scaling up before you're
You're
ready.
ready for it, yeah.
Before the revenue is there.
That makes sense.
Yeah, I've seen so many startups just burn through their funding because they were betting on this massive growth that just never materialized.
I feel like Jawbone is a really good example of that, right?
Oh, yeah, the wearable tech company.
Yeah, they were valued at billions at one point, but...
They overspent based on these really optimistic projections.
And ultimately that led to their
downfall.
fall, yeah.
They invested heavily in R&D, assuming these huge sales that just never happened.
They just didn't pan out.
It's a common problem.
Yeah, especially in those industries with a lot of hype, like tech.
Yeah, absolutely.
So what's the antidote to this overly optimistic forecasting?
Well, first of all, be conservative.
Okay.
Base your projections on solid data,
Right.
market research, not just gut feeling.
Not just gut feeling.
Yeah. And second, have a plan B.
Okay.
Explore other revenue streams
Right.
or ways to scale back
If the
the growth doesn't meet those expectations.
doesn't meet those expectations.
Don't put all your eggs in one basket.
That's great advice. It's like balancing ambition with realism.
Exactly.
All right, let's talk about another mistake that trips up a lot of entrepreneurs, even like seasoned entrepreneurs.
Okay.
Failing to separate profits from cash flow.
Oh, yeah.
So help me understand that distinction, because I think a lot of people get confused by that.
Absolutely. Profits are fantastic, but they don't always mean that you have cash on hand.
Right.
You might have a profitable product on paper,
Okay.
but if you're reinvesting all those profits back into the business without taking into account your day-to-day expenses,
Oh.
then you could be in trouble.
So it's like you've got a big fancy house, but
But the foundation is crumbling.
yeah, exactly.
You need to make sure that you're setting aside enough cash to cover your operating expenses.
Right.
regardless of how profitable you look on paper.
So even if it looks good, you still might not
You still might not have the cash flow.
have the cash flow, yeah.
Yeah, Webvin's a good example of this.
Oh, the online grocery.
The online grocery delivery service, yep.
What happened to them?
Well, they had amazing revenue figures,
Okay.
but they completely neglected their cash flow.
Oh, no.
And they ended up burning through over $1 billion
Oh, my God.
before they shut down.
Wow. That's scary.
It's a stark reminder.
That even if your business model looks good, you can't ignore
You can't ignore cash flow.
cash flow.
Yeah.
Okay. What are some ways to avoid falling into that trap?
Well, the profit first formula can be a game changer.
Okay.
Instead of waiting till the end of the month or the quarter to see what's left over, you allocate a certain percentage of your revenue
Oh, okay.
to different accounts like expenses, taxes, profit,
Got it.
owner's compensation.
That makes sense. So it's like almost like budgeting for your personal finances.
Exactly.
You wouldn't spend your entire paycheck on entertainment and then have nothing left for rent.
Exactly, right.
Okay.
And this approach makes sure you're not just chasing revenue.
Yeah.
You're actually building a sustainable business.
Right.
With a really strong financial foundation.
That sounds super helpful. I love that approach.
Yeah, it's a good one.
But before we get too into that, we should move on to our next mistake.
Okay.
You ready to tackle inventory management?
Let's do it.
Okay, inventory can be a silent killer, right?
It can be.
I'm ready to learn how to avoid that trap.
All right, let's do it.
Awesome.
It really is, too much inventory and your cash is tied up.
Yeah.
Too little and you're risking, those stockouts.
Right.
Lost sales.
Oh, yeah. Nobody wants that. So
Bingo.
how do startups, how do they find that sweet spot?
Well, it starts with really understanding your sales patterns.
Yeah.
What are your best-selling products?
Yeah.
What's that seasonality look like for your business?
Okay.
That data can really help you predict demand,
Yeah.
optimize your ordering process.
Okay. And I imagine, like, technology can play a big role here, right?
Absolutely.
Like, I've heard of inventory management software, but never really understood how it works.
Yeah.
Can you give me, like, an example of how that would actually help a startup?
Sure, let's say you're running like an e-commerce business.
Okay.
Selling clothing, for example.
Okay.
Inventory management software can track all that sales data,
Oh, wow.
identify those trends,
Okay.
and even like automate those purchase orders
Oh, wow.
to make sure that you always have the right amount of each item in stock.
Wow, that's amazing.
Yeah, less money tied up in excess inventory
Right.
and fewer missed sales.
So it's almost like having a virtual assistant who's just constantly monitoring your
It really is
inventory.
taking care of that for you.
That's awesome.
Yeah, and it frees you up to focus on other stuff.
Yeah, that's great. Now, I've also heard of this just-in-time approach.
Yeah, just in time.
What does it even mean?
So that's basically ordering and receiving goods only when you need them to fulfill those orders.
Oh, okay.
So you're minimizing the amount of inventory you have,
Got it.
reducing storage costs,
Makes sense.
and the risk of things becoming obsolete.
Yeah, so that sounds incredibly efficient,
It is very efficient.
but I imagine it requires a pretty reliable supply chain.
It does. You're absolutely right. It works best when you have those strong relationships with your suppliers.
Yeah.
A predictable sales cycle.
Okay.
It's not for everyone, but
It's a good tool.
it can be a powerful tool.
All right, let's talk about mistake number 5 here. Relying too much on venture capital.
Oh, yeah, that's a big one.
I think a lot of startups, they dream of getting that big VC investment, but you've kind of hinted that it can be detrimental.
It can be.
Can you elaborate on that a little bit?
Sure. So VC funding can be amazing,
Yeah,
right?
of course.
For some startups, it's a game changer,
Yeah.
but it's not a magic bullet.
Okay.
And I've seen so many founders get so focused on securing funding
Mm-hmm.
that they forget about building a sustainable business.
Oh, wow.
Yeah. They start spending recklessly,
Ow.
hiring too many people too soon,
Yeah.
making decisions based on what they think investors want to see,
Right.
rather than what's actually best for the company,
So it's like almost like winning the lottery and then
and then blowing it all
blowing it all.
on a mansion and a sports car
Right.
without thinking about the mortgage payments,
Exactly. Isn't
the
that
insurance costs.
So then when that VC money dries up, which it inevitably does,
Who does?
then these startups, they haven't built a solid revenue model.
Right. They haven't figured out.
And they're burning through cash.
Burning through cash.
Like it's going out of style.
That's a good way to put it.
Isn't Quibi like a really good example of that?
Oh, yeah, the short-form video platform.
Yeah, they raised billions in VC funding.
They did.
But they ultimately just failed to...
To attract a paying audience.
Yeah.
And they collapsed.
That's so sad.
It is sad. They had a flashy product.
Yeah.
Big names attached.
That they didn't understand.
They didn't understand their target market.
Right.
How to make money.
That's so important. So does that mean startups should just avoid VC funding altogether?
Not necessarily. It's about being smart about it. Don't chase funding just for the sake of funding.
Okay.
Focus on building a good product.
Okay.
Validating your market. Generating some revenue early on.
Yeah.
Use that VC funding strategically.
Okay.
To accelerate your growth, not as a crutch.
Not as a crutch, yeah.
To prop up a bad business model.
And explore those alternative funding options, right?
Absolutely. Bootstrapping, grants, crowdfunding.
Right, auction.
Yeah, there's no one-size-fits-all approach.
Right.
It's about finding what works for you.
Makes sense. All right, let's move on to a mistake that can be a real headache for startups.
Okay.
Delaying accounts receivable collection.
Oh, yeah, that's a tough one.
Yeah, I mean, it sounds pretty simple, right? Just send out those invoices, get paid.
Right.
But I feel like there's some nuances there that can really affect your cash flow.
There are.
Yeah, I've heard some horror stories of startups waiting months for payments.
It's a common problem.
Yeah.
Especially for those B2B businesses.
Okay.
Or companies working on those big projects with longer payment terms.
Right. Okay.
Yeah, it might seem like a good idea to extend generous credit terms to clients.
Right.
To win those deals.
Yeah.
But it can really create some cash flow gaps.
It's like giving someone an interest-free loan.
It is, yeah.
And then you're the one who needs the cash to keep your business afloat.
Exactly.
Yeah, and if clients are slow to pay, you might be scrambling to cover payroll. All those essential expenses.
Yeah, some industries are more vulnerable to this than others.
Like what kind of industries?
Construction, for example.
Okay.
Construction startups often struggle with late payments.
Really?
Yeah, which can lead to project delays.
Oh, wow.
Even business failures.
Wow, okay. So how can startups avoid this cash flow trap?
Well, first of all, be really clear.
Okay.
Up front about your payment terms.
Okay.
Don't bury them in the fine print.
Right.
Spell it out clearly.
Got it.
In those contracts, on those invoices.
I mean, it sounds obvious, but I feel like it could be easy to overlook that.
It happens more often than you think.
Yeah.
Yeah, and don't be afraid to charge late fees.
Oh.
It might seem a little awkward, but it sends a clear message.
Right, like we take this seriously.
Exactly.
Okay, what about using technology, like to streamline that whole process?
Oh, yeah, there are some great tools out there.
Are there tools that can help startups get paid faster?
Absolutely. There's things like FreshBooks,
Okay.
Zoho Invoice. Got it.
These platforms automate the whole thing.
Oh, wow.
They send out those invoices automatically,
Okay.
track those deadlines, send reminders to clients.
So it's almost like having like a virtual collections department.
It really is, yeah.
That's awesome.
And it saves you a ton of time and energy.
That's great. All right, let's move on to our final mistake on the list here.
Okay, sounds good.
Ignoring burn rate and runway.
Oh, yeah. Two very important terms.
Two terms that, like, every startup founder should know.
Absolutely.
Can you explain them in, like, super simple terms for our listeners?
Of course, of course.
Because I know they're both related to how a startup spends its money.
Right.
But I always get them confused.
Yeah, so think of burn rate as the speed at which you're spending your cash.
Okay.
How much money are you burning through each month to cover those operating expenses?
Got it.
Runway tells you how long you can keep operating with your current cash reserves.
Oh, okay.
It's the time you have left.
Before you run out.
Before you run out of money. So it's like a financial fuel gauge for your...
It is, yeah.
For your startup.
Absolutely.
You need to know how much fuel you have.
How fast you're burning through it.
Exactly. And ignoring these metrics is like driving with your eyes closed.
Yeah, you're going to crash eventually.
Exactly. The Fire Festival.
Oh, yeah.
That's like the
classic example.
Classic example of what happens when you ignore your burn rate.
Absolutely. Extravagant plans.
Yeah.
No spending management.
Yeah.
Imploded spectacularly.
They did.
It's a good cautionary tale.
Yeah, it highlights how important financial discipline is.
It does.
You need to track that burn rate, calculate your runway, and be prepared to make those tough decisions about cutting costs.
Absolutely.
So it's all about being proactive rather than reactive.
100%.
Because if you wait till you're in a cash crunch, it might be...
It might be too late.
Too late. Yeah. Early intervention is key.
Absolutely. So we've covered a lot of ground here today,
We have.
and I know it's been a lot of information, but I want to emphasize that mastering cash flow management, it's not about complicated formulas
Yeah.
or arcane financial wizardry.
It's about building that solid foundation,
Exactly.
understanding the key principles,
Right.
developing those good financial habits.
Absolutely. And remember, you don't have to go it alone.
Right.
There are so many resources available.
So many resources.
Like helping.
Like those books we've mentioned.
And books, yeah.
Financial Intelligence for Entrepreneurs.
Yeah.
Profit First.
Mm-hmm.
Simple Numbers. Straight Talk. Big Profits.
Good one.
The Lean Startup, Venture Deals, the Cash Flow Quadrant, and the Lean CFO.
All fantastic guides
All fantastic guides.
to help you navigate that world of startup finance.
Exactly. We've covered a lot today.
We have
Explored those 7 cash flow mistakes.
7 deadly mistakes.
That can really trip up a startup.
Absolutely.
And hopefully our listener is feeling much more equipped
I hope so.
to avoid those pitfalls and build a sustainable business.
Yeah. And remember, cash flow management is not a one-time thing.
Right.
It's an ongoing process.
Requires attention.
Discipline.
But with the right approach, you can ensure that your startup has that fuel.
It needs to thrive.
It needs to thrive, exactly. So I want to leave our listener with a thought-provoking question.
Okay.
What small changes can you implement today to improve your startup's cash flow?
That's a good one.
It might be something as simple as setting up an automated invoicing system
Right.
or reviewing your expenses to identify some areas where you can cut back.
Absolutely. The key is to take action.
Take action.
Even those small steps.
Can make a big difference.
Big difference over time.
So don't wait for a crisis to hit
Nope.
before you start paying attention to your cash flow.
Be proactive.
Take charge of your startup's financial health.
Today.
Set yourself up for success.
Long-term success.
And as always, stay curious.
Yes.
And keep diving deep into the knowledge that will help you build that thriving and sustainable business.
Couldn't agree more.
It's funny, right? You always hear about those startups hitting those like unicorn valuations,
Yeah.
but we rarely hear about like all the financial discipline.
The behind-the-scenes stuff.
Yeah, exactly. That got them there.
It's all about that foundation.
Yeah. So as we wrap up this deep dive, what are your final thoughts on like what really separates those startups that not only survive, but actually like thrive?
I think it boils down to a few key things.
Okay.
First, a deep understanding of their financials.
Yeah.
You know, it's not enough to have a great product.
Right.
Successful startups, they know their numbers inside and out.
They're not afraid to get into the nitty-gritty.
No, they're diving deep into those cash flow statements.
Yeah.
Balance sheets, profit and loss statements,
All that good stuff.
all of it.
Yes.
They're adaptable.
Okay.
You know, the startup journey, it's rarely a straight line.
Right. The roller coaster.
It's a roller coaster. They're constantly monitoring that cash flow,
Yeah.
adjusting their strategies, making tough decisions when they need to.
So they're not afraid to like pivot, cut costs, or even like delay expansion plans.
Exactly. If it means, you know, preserving that
Well,
runway.
preserving that runway.
Keeping the lights on.
Yeah, exactly. And finally,
Finally, I think the most successful startups have this culture of financial discipline.
okay.
It's in their DNA.
Yeah,
It's not just the CEO or the finance team.
right.
Everyone gets it.
Everyone understands the importance
Everyone understands, yeah.
of managing that cash flow.
Absolutely.
That's such a good point. It's like creating an environment where every decision from hiring to marketing
Everything.
is made with cash flow in mind.
Yep.
So for our listeners out there who are ready to take their startup's financial health to the next level, what's like the one piece of advice you would give them?
Don't wait for a crisis
Okay.
to start paying attention to your cash flow.
Start early.
Make it a priority from day one.
From day one.
Build those good habits early,
Yeah.
and it'll pay off in the long run.
It will. And remember, we've only just scratched the surface here. Those
Yeah.
books we mentioned.
Packed with information.
Packed with strategies and insights to really help you master this whole cash flow management thing.
They are.
All right. Well, that's a wrap on our deep dive into startup cash flow mistakes.
It's been fun.
I hope you found it insightful, empowering.
You too?
And remember, building a successful startup, it's a marathon, not a sprint.
Absolutely.
Pace yourself, manage that cash flow wisely, and you'll be well on your way to achieving those entrepreneurial dreams.
You got this.
Until next time, keep learning, keep growing, and keep those startups thriving.